After Star Wars was released, it became apparent that my story, however many films it took to tell, was only one of thousands that could be told about the characters who inhabited its galaxy. But these were not the stories that I was destined to tell. Instead, they would spring from the imagination of other writers, inspired by the glimpse of a galaxy that Star Wars provided. Today, it is an amazing, if unexpected, legacy of Star Wars that so many gifted writers are contributing new stories to that saga. George Lucas, from the introduction of A Splinters of the Mind's Eye, 1996.
Welcome back to the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view. I'm your host, Dormammu, and today we continue our journey through the pre-Clone Wars galaxy, where Jedi diplomacy often proves just as dangerous as lightsaber combat. In our previous episode, we delved into Outlander, the saga of Sharad Hutt, the fallen Jedi who became a Tusken warlord, and his son, Asharad, who inherited not just his father's lightsaber, but the heavy weight of his legacy. That story ended with Asharad joining the Jedi, his life forever torn between two worlds. Now, in Emissaries to Malastare, we see the next stage of his journey. Instead of the deserts of Tatooine, the stage shifts to Malastare, home of the Dug species, and the galaxy's most famous pod racing circuits. But this isn't just a story about pod races and spectacle, it's a tale of Republic politics at their messiest, where Jedi are called upon to serve as peacekeepers, referees, and inevitably pawns in disputes that are far bigger than them. This arc tests Asharad Hutt's place among the Jedi and pushes Ki-Adi-Mundi, the Sarayan Jedi Council member, further into the spotlight as the Council's representative. Meanwhile, the Malastare storyline foreshadows the creeping corruption of the Republic as commercial interests and Senate politics collide with the Jedi's increasingly strained role. So today, we'll unpack how this story balances political drama with Jedi action, and how it plants seeds for the larger unraveling of the Republic in the years to come. Emissaries to Malastare was released by Dark Horse Comics between December of 1998 and May of 1999. Written by Timothy Truman with art by Tom Lyle and Jan Durasema. Like much of Dark Horse's work in this era, it fleshes out the Jedi Council and their role in the Republic during the uncertain years surrounding the events of the Phantom Menace. In terms of timeline, this arc takes place shortly after the Battle of Naboo. While the galaxy is still recovering from the fallout of the Naboo crisis, new conflicts are already demanding the Jedi's attention. This time, the trouble comes not from the Sith, but from the long-standing disputes of the Lannik people, whose civil strife threatens to destabilize entire sectors of the Mid-Rim. To prevent further bloodshed, the Senate arranges for peace negotiations between the warring Lannik factions, and the Jedi Council dispatches 6 of its members: Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Adi Gallia, Plo Koon, Even Piell, and Yaddle to oversee the talks. The host world for these negotiations is Malastare, offered up by its senator, Ask-Ak, who presents his planet as a neutral and secure ground for diplomacy. Of course, Malastare is anything but neutral. Beneath its reputation as the galaxy's pod racing capital lies a world where politics and profit are tightly interwoven. The Lannik peace talks become entangled not just with local Malastare interests, but with the larger web of Senate intrigue that's slowly tightening around the Republic. In this way, the story places the Jedi at the center of diplomacy gone awry, while also foreshadowing how the Council's involvement in Senate matters will steadily compromise their ability to remain impartial peacekeepers. The story stands out because it doesn't focus on a lone Jedi or a small team. It thrusts a sizable portion of the Jedi Council itself into the heart of the conflict. By placing these masters front and center, the comic gives readers a rare chance to see how the Jedi operated collectively in the years following the Phantom Menace. For example, Mace Windu, as the Council's de facto leader in the field, Mace embodies authority and the steady hand of the Jedi. His presence on Malastare underscores the gravity of the mission. When Mace leaves Coruscant, it signals the entire Order is taking the conflict seriously. His role also illustrates how often the Jedi had to trade lightsabers for diplomacy, even when situations threatened to erupt into violence at any moment. Ki-Adi-Mundi is a Serayan Jedi whose unique perspective often highlights logic and practicality. Having only recently been elevated to the Council, Ki-Adi-Mundi is still establishing his voice amongst its ranks. His presence continues the through line from earlier Dark Horse arcs, namely Prelude to Rebellion and Outlander, tying this series of comics together with a consistent viewpoint character. Adi Gallia is known for her diplomatic skill and measured judgment. Gallia often acts as a counterbalance to more combative instincts within the Order. On Malastare, she serves as a reminder that the Jedi were chosen not just for their combat prowess, but for their ability to mediate and listen. Plo Koon is one of the more quietly respected members of the Council. Plo Koon's sense of justice and deep empathy for others make him a natural participant in the peace mission. His role highlights the Jedi's desire to genuinely resolve conflicts, even when surrounded by corruption. Even Peel is the gruff, battle-scarred Lannik Jedi Council member. His inclusion is both symbolic and personal. The negotiations are over his own people's civil strife. For Peel, this mission is more than diplomacy. It's a confrontation with the violence and political turmoil of his homeworld. And then there's Yaddle, who's often overlooked in the wider Star Wars saga. Yaddle's presence is a fascinating detail here. While she doesn't play a larger role, her inclusion demonstrates the Council's collective involvement in the affair, and it gives the story additional weight by including one of its rarer members. And then alongside the Jedi are two significant political figures. Senator Ask-Ak of Malastare, the Grand Senator who offers his planet as host for the Lannik negotiations. Ostensibly a gesture of neutrality, his involvement inevitably raises questions of political maneuvering and Malastare's own interests in galactic affairs. And there's the Lannik delegation. They represent the factions locked in civil strife. The Lannik bring the volatile heart of the conflict to Malastare. Their disputes are complex, rooted in cultural divisions and long histories of mistrust, making the Jedi's role as arbiters almost impossible. Together, these figures set the stage for a narrative that's less about clashing armies and more about the grinding difficulties of politics, diplomacy, and the impossible balancing act the Jedi were asked to perform. The peace mission begins with promise. The Jedi Council has dispatched 6 of its members to oversee negotiations between the warring factions of Lannik. To lend legitimacy and neutrality to the proceedings, Senator Ask-Ak has offered Malastare as the venue. On the surface, it seems like a diplomatic coup. Host the galaxy's Great Peace Accord while the planet is also entertaining the masses with one of its most spectacular pod races. But in reality, the pod race is little more than a smokescreen, a distraction that masks a deadly conspiracy. Behind the scenes, a plot has been hatched to assassinate the Jedi Council delegation during the negotiations and pin the blame squarely on the King of Lannik. Such a move would not only destabilize the peace effort, but also plunge the Lannik deeper into conflict, discrediting their leadership in the eyes of the Republic. The conspiracy makes use of Malastare's distractions and shadows, counting on chaos and spectacle to hide its hand. The attempt, however, fails. The Jedi survive the assassination attempt, exposing the conspiracy for what it is. But even though their lives are spared, the negotiations collapse. The factions leave Malastare as divided as they arrived, and the opportunity for peace slips through the Council's fingers. Yet the story does not end there. In the wake of the failed diplomacy, Mace Windu takes on a separate mission to the lawless moon of Nar Shaddaa, where the tendrils of the conspiracy stretch into the underworld. There, he uncovers an illicit Hutt enterprise, a brutal fighting ring that uses non-sentient creatures as gladiators, smuggled in violation of Republic law. True to his role as Jedi peacekeeper, Mace dismantles the operation, confronting not only the Hutts, but the very corruption and cruelty that fuel the galaxy's darker corners. By the close of the arc, the Jedi return to Coruscant carrying two bitter truths. First, that their presence cannot guarantee peace when entire systems are entrenched in mistrust. And second, that the galaxy's corruption extends far beyond the Senate chamber, stretching from Malastare's racetracks to the Hutt cartel's fighting pits. It's an uneasy reminder that even the mightiest Jedi cannot stem the tide of decay spreading throughout the Republic. Emissaries to Malastare fits snugly into the shifting political landscape of the prequel era, reinforcing themes that run throughout the expanded universe and the films themselves. With themes such as the Jedi's political agents, where this arc continues to highlight how the Jedi Council is increasingly used as a tool of the Republic's Senate. Instead of simply serving as guardians of peace, they are dispatched into the heart of political conflicts, where diplomacy and manipulation outweigh any lightsaber duel. The failed negotiations at Malastare foreshadow larger issues to come, such as the Jedi's inability to prevent the Clone Wars. And there's the Lannik conflict in Evan Peel. By tying the peace talks to Evan Peel's own people, the story personalizes the Jedi Council's struggles. It also demonstrates how even the presence of one of their own on the Council cannot guarantee a stable resolution. This underlines the limits of Jedi authority, even in matters deeply tied to their members' personal heritage. The Hutts and Nar Shaddaa also have a big role in that Mace Windu's side mission connects this arc directly to the wider criminal underworld of Star Wars. The Hutts' use of non-sentient creatures in fighting rings reflects their broader role as purveyors of cruelty and vice, while Nar Shaddaa once again proves to be a nexus for smuggling, corruption, and illegal trade. This thread echoes forward into countless other stories, from Han Solo's entanglements to the Clone Wars depiction of Hutt power. And there's the seeds of Republic rot everywhere. Perhaps the most important connection is the thematic of it. The negotiations end in failure, proving that the Republic's mechanisms for peace are already breaking down. The Jedi, despite their skill and their moral authority, cannot force unity where political self-interest prevails. This failure resonates with the central theme of the prequel era, that the Republic is too fractured and corrupt to survive, and the Jedi's entanglement in politics will only hasten their downfall. Emissaries to Malastare is a compact yet surprisingly rich arc, one that uses political intrigue and action to explore the Jedi's role in a galaxy that is rapidly growing beyond their control. Unlike many other Star Wars stories that focus on lightsaber battles or Sith scheming, this comic emphasizes diplomacy, subterfuge, and the precarious balance of power within the Republic. The failed negotiations on Malastare highlight a recurring theme in prequel-era storytelling, that good intentions alone are not enough. Even the wisdom of 6 Jedi Council members cannot overcome entrenched divisions, manipulation, and greed. This failure foreshadows the greater crisis to come, subtly preparing the reader for the political machinations that will define the Clone Wars. Mace Windu's detour to Nar Shaddaa provides a counterpoint to the diplomacy debacle, reminding readers that the Jedi still act decisively when confronted with injustice and outright criminality. The juxtaposition of these two missions, one a failure in politics, the other success in law enforcement, underscores the limits of the Jedi's influence and the variety of challenges they face. For fans of the expanded universe, this story deepens the characterization of the Council members, gives Even Peel a personal stake, and paints Malastare as more than just a pod racing backdrop. It's a tale that blends spectacle with substance, offers a rare window into the Jedi navigating politics, intrigue, and moral dilemmas long before the Clone Wars consumed the galaxy. And that brings us to the end of Emissaries to Malastare. This arc may be short, but it leaves a lasting impression, showing the Jedi not as invincible warriors, but as diplomats caught in the machinery of a republic already stretched thin. Between assassination plots, failed negotiations, and criminal underworlds, the story reminds us that the galaxy's chaos often cannot be solved by morality or skill alone. Next time on the Skywalker Files, from a certain point of view, we shift focus to the shadowy bounty hunter underworld with the Dark Horse comic Jango Fett Open Seasons. We'll follow Jango as he navigates dangerous contracts, confronts his own code of honor, and sets the stage for the rise of his son, one of the most infamous figures in galactic history. Prepare for a story that's grittier, darker, and filled with the kind of moral ambiguity that only a bounty hunter can bring to the Star Wars universe. Until then, may your hyperdrive stay true and your credits stay safe.